Hey USA, it's just me, and as you know, I'm nobody, just an American, and this is Just an American Moment. This is the podcast where we ask the questions the mainstream media won't ask, and we offer the answers and solutions that the political class either can or won't offer. So, welcome to today's show. You know, I have been struggling lately whether I wanted to talk about this topic again because um, it seems on one hand to be in our face all the time, but on the other hand, nobody seems to be getting to the bottom of things. And by the bottom of things, I mean the truth. The truth about COVID, the truth about the quote China virus. Now, as a quick refresher by way of background, uh, I worked in China for over 35 years, closer to 38 years. I lived there. I worked there. I employed people there. I lived there during the SARS pandemic. I managed 2,000 people at that time as CEO of a company based in China. And I got to tell you, I learned a lot. And I know a hell of a lot more about China than these people we see in the mainstream media. The people who haven't spent any time there, the people who make assumptions about China and know nothing about it, don't understand how complex a place it is, and can only look at it from a political vantage point. So, all that being said, I want to talk a little bit about how lazy our media is and how lazy our politicians are for not getting to the bottom of COVID. It is absolutely crazy. Think about it, people. China is a nation with over 1 billion people. 1 billion people. And I've mentioned this before. They reported 90,000 cases of COVID and under 5,000 deaths. How do you think that happened? Do you have any clue at all? Why isn't the media asking the right questions? I hear the bullshit about, oh, they just lock their cities down. They control their people. That's a bunch of BS. It's the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard in my life. You can't lock people down in Shanghai, and you can't lock people down in Beijing, and you can't lock people down in Shenzhen. That's a joke to even assume they could. And you didn't vaccinate that many people. So what is going on? Sure, we can look just from the vantage point of saying, well, we know the Chinese lied and they misrepresented the number. But this has been going on too long. And now we have this Delta variant, right? And no one asks the question, well, is there a Delta variant in China? What kind of variants are there in China? Why aren't we hearing about COVID in China anymore? We hear nothing on the mainstream media. Why? Because they're so afraid about calling it the China virus. Yet we all know it started in Wuhan. And I think we all know pretty much where it started in Wuhan. So why isn't anyone searching for the truth? Now, I don't profess to know the truth 100%, but I will use my experience in China to tell you that something is up as it relates to China specifically, and more importantly, what's going on with our political class? What is going on with our media? Why isn't anyone investigating this? I want to know. You know, we barely hear about anywhere else in the world these days. I feel like we're being shut off from the rest of the world. Sure, we hear there's a lot of cases in India, and that may be one of the exceptions these days. We'll hear a little bit about Australia being locked down or a new variant in the UK. But we don't hear very much about Southeast Asia. What's going on in Vietnam? What's going on in Thailand? What's going on in Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines? Why don't we hear anything? Why isn't anyone investigating this? It's not that difficult to get to the source of some of these things if people are willing, but people aren't willing for a reason, and we need to understand what those reasons are. I suspect that it doesn't fit a political narrative. And this is really the problem with this disease. It's been politicized. As I said, I was there during SARS. It was never politicized during SARS. It couldn't be politicized. People were trying to find solutions. They were trying to find answers to what was causing it and where it came from. And any of us who were there know the behavior pattern of the mainland Chinese during the whole SARS pandemic. And we also know and are really grateful to the terrific response of the people of Hong Kong in containing it and taking effective and immediate action. Of course, nobody in this country ever bothered to ask anybody who had experience with SARS whether we might be able to offer some help. But that's water under the bridge at this point. The fact is, it's out of control. And we're also not hearing much about South America. And this is a great segue. How many cases of COVID are there in Latin America? The one thing we do know is those cases are showing up at our southern border. Those cases are showing up every day. And unlike the restrictions that we put on flights coming into this country and people who could potentially have COVID coming into this country from all over the world, when it comes to the southern border, it's okay. We're going to let them in. Everything is fine. That is just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yet in this country, we're telling the people they may have to have an ID card that shows they were vaccinated. Does anybody remember AIDS? Does anybody remember 1981, back when the AIDS started? And there were suggestions that people ought to carry medical cards with them. The same people today who are pumping the whole idea of you carrying a COVID vaccine card are the same people who didn't want to identify AIDS patients coming into this country. Just remember that. Just remember that, because it's true. But meanwhile, we've got this crisis going on our southern border. We've got people coming in, not from the Central American countries alone. We've got people coming from at least 50 different countries that have been identified thus far. 50 different countries. We see people from Ghana. We see people from other parts of Africa. We see people from the Middle East. We see people from Romania. They're all coming into this country, and we know nothing about them. And surreptitiously, our military puts them on flights and brings them around the country and drops them off. What the hell is going on? What is going on? And I'd like to know, in this rise of new COVID cases, the Delta variant, do we have included in that number these illegal aliens who are coming into the country? Do we? If the COVID cases in southern Texas are up 900%, then you got to ask yourself that question. But nobody's asking it. Why? Ask yourself why they aren't asking it. It's just beyond the pale. Beyond the pale that we could have this many people coming to this country. So we've got two big problems that I've just identified. We've got no research, no investigation, no inquisitiveness into why we're not hearing about China and what is going on in China right now as it relates specifically to COVID, and why there haven't been any variants, and how cities with over 10 or 20 million people can control these variants within their population if they exist, but we can't in this country. Doesn't it make you wonder? I know, I sure as hell wonder. Are all the school children in China wearing masks these days? Are they? Do you know? Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know what's so different about China versus the United States? Or Russia? What's going on in Russia? Any of you know? Vladimir Putin seems to be very relaxed, very content. We're not hearing anything about Russia. So this is my whole point. The political class and the media are trying to contain all the news within the United States. And they're sending out singular messages on the control they want to have within the United States. And we should start asking why. Why? It'll make you crazy. Next topic. Next topic is a quote from the man in the White House, which just flipped me out. Pardon me for reading. But the other day, Joe Biden, instead of sounding like a president, sounded like a typical senatorial liberal Democrat. He goes, he comes out and he talks about the infrastructure bill. And he says that specifically, we're going to invest in America's workers and create good paying, high skilled union jobs. Now, hang on a minute. We're going to use the infrastructure bill to create high paying union jobs. Well, since the percentage of union workers, non governmental union workers in particular, is very small in this country, what about the rest of America? The President of the United States isn't supposed to discriminate. The President of the United States isn't supposed to be talking about workers in one category only, union workers. He's supposed to talk about the needs of all American workers. You know, it cracks you up because small businesses in America aren't unionized. They don't even have enough people in their companies to be unionized. Yet they offer the blood, sweat, and tears that make this country work. So we've got the President of the United States talking like this. Well, I'll tell you why he's talking like this. Because you have a man in the White House who has never had a real job, never managed a business, never made a payroll, and for 47 years has lived off the taxpayer and insider deals while accomplishing nothing. That's why. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I ask anyone, prove me wrong. It's the truth. So on a lighter note, a couple of other things I wanted to talk about today. This one's really crazy, but I have grandkids, and I realized lately that they don't teach, at least in the schools in North Carolina, the ones they go to, the public schools, they don't teach kids cursive. Cursive. And I started thinking to myself, that's true in many of the states these days. In point of fact, it's the states that decide whether or not in the school's curriculum they teach cursive. So I was thinking to myself, and I asked my grandson the other day, and he's 12 years old, I said, let me see your signature. And he printed it. And I thought to myself, what's going to happen in the future when kids have to sign for something and they don't write in cursive? What are they going to make their mark? They're going to put an X on a piece of paper? When they go for medical exams, when they go for legal documents, how are they going to sign for them? It's not all going to be done electronically. So just a little crazy food for thought. Our president this week says the future of the automobile industry is electric. Want to bet? Want to bet, Joe? I'll take that bet. You're wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. And I can probably prove it. In fact, I know I can prove it. But you're wrong. Next thing. Matt Damon apologizes for allegedly using the word fag. Now, I don't know when the left first took over language, but you know, I'm kind of an old guy. So when I grew up, a fag was never directed towards homosexuals. In fact, no one really cared back in those days, really, about what people did in private. But a fag used to be, first, a cigarette. Someone would say, hey, can I have a fag? They'd be given a cigarette. Okay. Later, it was something that we used to call our friends when they were acting goofy. We'd go, you fag, you faggot. It had nothing to do with someone's sexual preferences or their behaviors. It had to do with their attitudes or how they were acting in a specific situation. You know, when Justin Thomas missed a putt a few months ago, and he goes, oh, you fag, about himself. I don't think he meant anything disparaging about people who people's sexual preferences, or if you're a homosexual or you're not a homosexual. Quite honestly, I don't care. You can be whatever you like to be. It has no impact on my life. But when people start controlling words and start shaming people because of the words they use, this is controlled speech. And I'm sorry, it's not allowed in our Constitution. It's not allowed in this country. So knock it off. Okay, big news. The New York Post reports that Meghan Markle unveils her chic home office, including a $1,550 blanket. And we care why. Right. And this one I love. It's from David Webb. This is such a terrific thing. David Webb says, it would honestly be easier for everybody if Biden would just turn the teleprompter around and let us read it to ourselves. I absolutely love it. I am still waiting for the press to ask him a question and have him say, blah, blah, blah. That's all, folks. Anyhow, that's our podcast for today. I want to leave it with a quote from my other book, Dodging Bullets, Shooting Back, Surviving on the Corporate Battlefield. It's a quote from Tom Peters, and it says, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. And these days, if you're watching what's going on in Washington and you're not confused, you really aren't paying attention. So do me a favor, help support me. I'm nobody. I'm just an American. I don't have 25 shows on Fox News to plug my book, and I guarantee I've got more substance in my book than you'll get from most of those other people. Thanks very much. Bye.